is Courtney Sievers. I actually live in Arvada, Colorado. I work for Magellan Strategies, and we're a public opinion research firm that does a lot of community surveys and ballot measure surveys across Colorado. And we did this survey for the town of Gypsum, this community survey from September 7th through September 21st of this year. Oh, so now I can't. There we go. Really, the objectives of this community survey were to measure and understand residents' thoughts and opinions on all things, really town services, programs that the town is doing, budget priorities, and as well as quality of life aspects. So just kind of to explain how the survey was done, we use technology that sends a text message to town residents. So you can see on the left of the screen that kind of example text message. That is what we sent to town residents, inviting them to take the survey, and they can click a link from that text message in order to them to go online and take the survey. 467 residents from the town completed the survey from September 7th to the 21st. That's almost 10% of the actual voting population for the town of Gypsum. That's a really good response rate. So I give props to your guys' town staff for getting that sent out and helping us get that sent out on top of the text messages. So that's a really strong response rate, and that gives you guys a lot of data to work with as we dive through these numbers. The overall survey had a margin of error of 4.32% at the 95% confidence interval. And I do want to point out that some of these subgroups that we'll look at throughout the rest of the survey, those margin of errors are going to be a little bit higher. And then the results were weighted to be representative of the adult population of the town of Gypsum, which I just want to give kind of a brief touch on that. It's roughly 51% female, 47% male. And the age breakout is about 33% that are 18 to 34, 37% that are 35 to 54, and 30% that are 55 plus. And I'll keep touching on those as we go through there, but I just kind of wanted to give you guys that breakdown. So let's jump right into this. We discussed a bank of questions, or excuse me, we asked them about their top issue priority. And this was a verbatim question. We want to hear this straight from their mouth, what they think is the top 3 or 4 priorities that the town of Gypsum should be addressing. The top themes are there on the left, and a lot of it came down to downtown community feel that would include restaurants, retail, stores, and that just community overall feel and community central area to pull all those things together. And then followed by that is the traffic, speeding, safety within the town, followed by code enforcement, and then recreation and parks, and then water. And really that really revolved around quality of water and the availability of water. And these are just some examples on the right of what those verbatim responses look like. I highly recommend, if you have the time to do this, to go through these verbatim responses. There's a lot of verbatim questions that we included in this survey, and I'll touch on quite a bit of them. And any of these verbatim responses that you can read through are going to be very telling and very informative to all of you, in the fact that it's straight from the residents' mouth, and they're very, very interesting to go through and see what's really important to the residents. So let's jump into the quality of life questions. We kind of break this out into 2 different groups, and this being the first group, which is just kind of overall quality of life aspects. And this is ranked on an excellent, good, fair, poor ranking scale. And the percentages on the right are those that is excellent or good combined. So the overall quality of life of Gypsum 80% excellent or good. That's a high number. That's good to see as we go through all these. And then if you're looking down further, your neighborhood as a place to live, that's your specific neighborhood at 78%. And then the town of Gypsum as a place to live at 75%, followed by Gypsum as a place to raise a family at 72%. So all 4 of those being over 70% are really strong numbers at that excellent or good mark. And then it does start to drop just a little bit, with 49% saying that Gypsum is a good place to retire, a good or excellent, place to retire. And then 28% saying that the ease of bus travel to and from Gypsum, only 28% saying it's excellent or good. However, 35% of respondents had no opinion on that. And so when you look at it and think of it, 28% out of really 65% that have an opinion on it, That's actually not a bad number. So I just wanted to point that out with 35% having no opinion. That's most likely due to the fact that they've never used the bus system or they just don't have any experience with that. And then followed by 28% saying that Gypsum's a good place to work or find a job. 21% saying that Gypsum's a good place, good or excellent place to start a business. And again, this no opinion number really stands out here with 20% saying no opinion on that question. Those are really, again, just people that aren't familiar with how to do that or the process of doing that, and if Gypsum is a good or excellent place to do that. And then last but not least, there on the bottom, 5% saying that it's an excellent or that Gypsum's an excellent or good quality of life aspect for Gypsum, having a place for dining, restaurant, and grocery options. And this really goes back to that last verbatim response where they're looking more for restaurants, community, downtown feel, even retail, just as a place of dining, restaurant, and grocery options. And I did want to point out that actually 75% rated this as poor on this question. So let me go into this question and then I'll ask kind of break for questions here. These again are just following characteristics that relate to Gypsum as a whole. This again is ranked on excellent or good, and all of these were rated on an excellent, good, fair, or poor option choice. So Gypsum as a place of recreation, 58% excellent or good. Ease of walking in Gypsum, 55% excellent or good. Availability of paths or walking trails in Gypsum, 52%. All of those more recreation types being over 50%. That's good. That's something that they see and that's something that they like. And you'll see that kind of pop through as we go through the rest of this survey. Just under for 50%, say excellent or good for ease of bicycle travel in just Gypsum. 39% saying building relationships or social connections. 37% saying traffic flow on major streets, and 18% saying availability of housing choices. And again, I just wanted to point out on that last one, availability of housing choices, 32% said fair on that, and 45% said poor on the availability of housing choices. That's something to just keep in mind, especially as we go through these results and move forward. But that being said, does anybody have any questions on these first few slides?
I think we're good.
All right, keep moving. So the next battery of questions that we did was asking how satisfied or what's your level of satisfaction with the town's services that are listed. And this asked this was rated on a scale of excellent satisfied, somewhat satisfied, not too satisfied, or extremely dissatisfied. And these percentages that are on the right are extremely and somewhat satisfied combined. And you can really see that these are strong numbers with all of the services that we tested being over 60% extremely or somewhat satisfied. And so that's really good as we go through these numbers. But the highest thing that they're extremely or somewhat satisfied with is the street maintenance, 79%, followed by landscaping at town parks and town-owned areas at 78%, followed by trash service at 77%. And I just want to point out that 16% of respondents do not have an opinion on the trash service. So among those that do have an opinion, that number is actually a little bit higher, closer to 88%. And then followed by community events, gatherings, concerts, and holiday celebrations at 76, utility billing and town parks, pedestrian trails, and bicycle trails also at 76%. So all of these ones on the top here are all within the margin of error. Really, any given day, these top 6 choices are within the margin of error and could be ranked any possible option due to the fact that they're all just so close. But that's good because they are all really high, strong numbers moving forward. So the rest here are still high, 75% for snow removal, 72% for street lighting, 71% for water treatment, community relations and outreach at 69%, and then wastewater treatment at 64%. And again, I just want to point out that roughly 1 in 5 people did not have an opinion regarding wastewater treatment. And so that's where that is. And then this is continued on overall following town services, again, ranked by extremely and somewhat satisfied. And really, these ones are kind of different in how we look at them due to the fact of the no opinions. So those top two, 64%, are not that far off from the other slide, the previous slide, with overall value of services for the taxes paid to the town and public meetings of elected officials. Or other local public meetings with 28% saying no opinion, 64% saying they're extremely or somewhat satisfied with that. But then when we get to these bottom five, you can see that the no opinions that are there on the right get quite a bit higher. Building permits and inspection services, 34%. Code enforcement services, 30%. Economic development efforts, 28%. Land planning development review process, 26%, and municipal court, 23%. But you look on the right there, at least 35% of those bottom five have no opinion, with even the top four really being closer to 50%, and the municipal court being almost 70% no opinion. That's really due to the fact that most people are not as informed about what those services are, or they've never had to use those services. Which is good and bad. But the fact of the matter is roughly half of the population just has not used those services, so they're not as familiar with them. Is there any questions on those two slides? All right. I will go to the budget items. So we asked this question, we can actually look at it multiple different ways, but we asked the question, Town of Gypsum each year makes budget decisions allocating taxpayer dollars towards town services and programs. With that in mind, please rank the following budget items in order of priority that you would like to see. So we ranked them from 1 to 13. And what this is showing, what this graph is showing on the right is the percentage of each actual option as ranked number 1 budget item. So 45% of respondents said that public infrastructure improvement like roadway expansion, bike paths, and new sidewalks is their number 1 budget priority. 14% of respondents said roadway maintenance, resurfacing, snow plowing, and street sweeping, are 14%. So really that comes down, those two are very, very comparative, both regarding roads and expansion, bike paths, road maintenance, and etc. So those really are the top 2 choices coming down to transportation and roads kind of services. The third top choice was police services at 11% of respondents ranking that number 1. And then the rest of these were all less than 10%. Recreational amenities, water treatment and billing services, land planning and development review, parks planning and management, community communications and outreach, wastewater treatment, town events, mosquito mitigation, and then building permitting and inspection services and trash services were 0%. So nobody ranked those 2 last options as the number 1 budget priority. Let's look at the growth and development in Gypsum. So there's 2 ways that we ask this question. How would you rate the speed of new residential housing growth and development in Gypsum for the past 5 years? Do you think it's too fast, just the right amount, or too slow? And again, this is just residential housing. 33%, or a third of respondents, said that it's too fast. 39% said just the right amount, and 20% said it was too slow, with 8% having no opinion. But if we look at this really by voter subgroup, you can see there is a little bit of a difference there between men and women, with 26% saying of men saying it's too slow, residential housing growth, compared to only 14% of women saying it's too slow, as well as just the difference between too fast. Men, 29% think it's too fast. 37% of women think it's too fast. And then if you look at it by age range, you can see the older the respondent gets, the more they think that residential housing is too fast, compared to that 18 to 34 demographic, with 27%, only 27% saying too fast, and 36% saying it's too slow, compared to 15 and 10% for that 35 to 54 and 55 plus age groups. And that characteristic and that correlation kind of carries over to those that have lived in Gypsum for less than 10 years. with 22% saying too fast and 24, nearly a quarter of those respondents saying that it's too slow, compared to those that have lived in Gypsum for more than 10 years. 42% say too fast, 17% say too slow. So that really comes down to those that have lived there, that lack of change, that lack of growth, and really just, or excuse me, not lack of growth, but the fact that the growth has increased so much over the last few years compared to how it was before. But let's look at it too by retail and commercial growth and development in Gypsum over the past 5 years. So as we mentioned, really that top issue and top priority that people were looking at was kind of that community downtown, community center, retail, restaurants, shops kind of area, which really comes down to this question as well, showing that 79% think that retail and commercial growth and development is too slow. So nearly 8 out of 10 residents think that growth is too slow, compared to only 5% that think it's too fast and 13% that think it's just right. And really, if you look at the right here, there's no big differences by subgroup. Men, women, they're both within the margin of error. Same really with, there's not a huge difference between the 3 age groups. And there is a slight difference there between those that are less than 10 years versus those that have lived there more than 10 years. But 73% still, they have been there more than 10 years, think that new retail and commercial growth and development is too slow.
Courtney, this is Jeremy. I was just wondering if you could go back to that last slide, I can make a couple of comments. Just a couple of observations from my end on this. I think what you see in some of these numbers are exactly some of the really critical and challenging policy questions that are going to be hard to make decisions on in the future. For example, you see that, people say that their housing choices are very limited. And then you see that there's a lot of people here that feel like development might be occurring too quickly, especially in the older cohort or people that have lived here longer. And then same on the inverse of that, younger population saying, hey, maybe this growth isn't happening quickly enough. And a lot of that has to do about where you are in your life and what your needs are. If you're younger and you haven't been able to buy into a property yet, you may really think that development pace is too slow. If you've been here a long time, you've already got that set, you may think it's too fast. The other dynamic, if you go to the slide talking about the commercial growth pace, this one's really interesting. I think this is incumbent upon us to make sure that we're communicating well with the public about the market dynamics at play here, because when you have a largely bedroom community with a huge amount of out commuting, everybody's wallet is somewhere else during the day. And so that's why you aren't seeing some of the commercial investment and development that obviously a lot of people would like to see, is that the market hasn't seen that there's opportunity here yet. Now, I think that's why I'm excited about some of this downtown development opportunity that's forthcoming, because I think we're very aligned to the results we're seeing in this survey. And I think we'll see a lot of support for some public-private partnership to see that happen. But it isn't any mystery to me why some of this commercial development hasn't occurred. It's that, there are some regional centers that have the market pretty well captured, and in Glenwood and in Vale and Edwards area, where that's where people are working. And so they're more likely to spend their money on a lunch trip or something during the day. But yeah, really interesting data. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. All right, so then we looked at some land use and planning issues and the importance of them. Please indicate the importance of the following land use and planning issues. Again, these are based off of extremely very somewhat or not important at all. Those are the rating scale that we used. The percentages on the right are based off of combined, extremely, or very important. And again, you can see that recreational kind of jump to the top here. Recreational amenities, 81%. Water use conservation, which is stuff that we saw in that top issue question. Water use and conservation, 80%. Parks, trails, and open space, 78%. And again, going back to that town character, community, 76%, retail opportunities, 76%, and economic development, 76%. followed by a downtown core at 75%. So those four kind of go back into what we were discussing regarding that kind of downtown economic retail restaurant type core. And they're all within that 76%. And then very or extremely important, here's affordable housing at 68%, followed by historic preservation, cultural resources, it's 59%, transportation options, 57%, social diversity, excuse me, at 47%, and tourism at 24%. And again, these are based off of extremely and very important. And one thing I do want to point out is that tourism number at 24%, extremely and very important. However, 30% of respondents said that that's not important at all. And so that was really the only not important at all percentage that was stood out. And so I just wanted to point that out, that 30% of respondents said tourism was not important at all. So let's go into some public safety questions. First of all, do you think, or thinking now about crime and public safety, do you feel safe living in Gypsum? And this is broken out by intensity. So the blue chart, part of the chart is very safe. The red part of the chart is somewhat safe. And it's important to point out that those two combined, those that feel totally safe within the town of Gypsum, 90%. So 9 out of 10 respondents say they feel safe, and only 9% say that they feel unsafe in one way or another. So that's a good, strong number, especially with how times have been lately. And so that's a good, strong number. And whether you're looking at it by men or women or younger, older, those really don't change as you look down through here. Roughly 50%, no matter the subgroup, feel very safe within the town of Gypsum. And another 35 to 40% feel somewhat safe. So again, those are strong numbers, and no more than 11%, or excuse me, 13% feel unsafe. Then we asked you approve or disapprove of the following aspects of public safety in Gypsum. And this was on a strongly or somewhat approve or somewhat or strongly disapprove scale. And so 72% of respondents approve of the overall performance of the Gypsum Police Department, and 17% do not have an opinion on that. 71% approve of the visibility presence of patrol cars in town. 70% approve of the police coverage, and presence during the day. 59% approve of the coverage and presence during the night. So it's a little lower there between day and night. And then 40% approve of the response times to calls during the day. 36% approve of the response time to calls during the night. But really the big thing on those last two is 56% no opinion on the response times during the day, 58% no opinion on response times during the night. Those are those people that are just not familiar, have not had to use the police, which is a good thing, during the day or night. And so roughly half, a little more than half, whether it be during the day or during the night, have no opinion. And that's really just due to the fact that they have not been used and have not had the need for that. And then we asked another question regarding public safety. To what extent are you concerned about the following in the town of Gypsum? A 5 means you're very concerned, and a 1 means you are not concerned at all. And so this is ranked by the percentage of 5. So of those that are very concerned, the top choice there, 36% of respondents saying they're very concerned with speeding. 27% are very concerned with ATV or dirt bike use in inappropriate areas. Nearly a quarter, 25%, say illegal narcotics. 1 in 5, 21% say unattended pets. 17% parking enforcement. 13% property crimes. 9% domestic disturbances, and 6% violent crimes. So you can see where respondents are looking and where they're concerned about what's happening in their neighborhoods, especially when it comes to safety, and speeding's really there on the top. Any questions regarding public safety? Okay, So then we went into some occupational questions. The town of Gypsum wants to understand working residents' status and commute habits. So we asked residents what their employment status is. 54% are employed full-time with a salary. 12%, excuse me, 12% are retired. 10% are employed part-time or paid hourly. 9% are local business owners. 5% are a worker or contractor paid by the job. 4% are students. And then 3% are homemakers or stay-at-home parents. 1% are on disability and can't work. 0% of respondents are unemployed for the survey, and then 2% would prefer not to say. So then we asked to those that are employed either full or part-time, we asked them what their commute habits are. And 70% of those respondents, of the 364 that are employed full or part-time, 70% actually go to their workplace every day. 17% have a hybrid version of working, some days at home, other days in the workplace. 9% are working remotely from home every day. And then 3% have some other form of commute that we did not mention. We also asked those that work, which of the following modes of transportation do they use? 91% of respondents use a gas-powered vehicle. 10% use a hybrid-powered vehicle. 7% ride a bike. 6% use the bus. 4% walk. 3% use an electric bicycle. 2% use an electric-powered automobile. And then 3% use some other mode of transportation. Any questions on occupation and commute habits? Okay. Moving forward, we asked some questions regarding the mosquito control mitigation. How familiar are you with the town of Gypsum's mosquito mitigation control program? 12% say they're very familiar. 36% say they're somewhat familiar. So a total of just under half, 48% of respondents are somewhat at least familiar with the mitigation control program. However, 25% are not familiar at all, nearly a quarter, or right at a quarter of respondents. And so that's not bad. That's actually what I would expect it to be for a program such as this. It really comes back to the people that are outside using the outdoors that are more involved and more active and have an understanding of what this is. So there's really also no huge difference here between subgroups. Men and women are very similar. That 18 to 34 group, 38%, 4 out of 10 are not as familiar with the mitigation control program, where on the opposite, that 55 plus, you have roughly 60% that are at least somewhat familiar with the program. Yeah. And that kind of falls in line too with the less than 10 years versus the more than 10 years living within the town of Gypsum. 38% of those that have lived there less than 10 years are not familiar at all, compared to only 13% of those that have lived there more than 10 years. So then we said, regardless of how familiar you are with the town's mosquito mitigation program, do you support or oppose it? 78% of respondents support the program and 12% of the respondents oppose the program. Nearly half, 46% of respondents strongly support the program. So that intensity is there. They definitely support it. Only 3% of those respondents strongly oppose it. And so that's a good sign there. And really, no matter what the subgroup is, over 65% of no matter the subgroup support the mitigation program, with the lowest there being 18 to 34-year-olds at 67% support it. Any other questions or any questions on the mosquito questions? Okay. Now we asked a few library questions. Do you or anyone in your family use the Gypsum library? 61% of respondents do use the library. 33% said no, but that they use, or excuse me, 6% said no, but that use other Eagle County library locations. And then roughly a third, 33% do not use any of the library locations. More women, not surprisingly, there use the library in Gypsum compared to men. And same with as you get a little bit older, but over half of no matter the age group, has used the Gypsum library. And so that's good across the board. Then among those respondents that use the library, we asked what could the Gypsum library do to improve library usage. And we did have them select all that apply. 41% said nothing, they like it as is. 36% said provide additional services or programs. 26% said provide additional inventory. 18% said expand hours of operation, and 12% said expand days of operation. Then we did ask a verbatim question, asking them, please explain what the Gypsum library could specifically do to improve from their selections above. And really that do nothing came across again. It's awesome. They do a great job. That was towards the top. A lot of people mentioned more programs, whether that be for the younger demographic, for toddlers. There's a mention here, if you look at this fourth verbatim, regarding toddlers and programs for story time. And then there's also some mentions of different materials, longer, different hours, better promotion or advertising. And then inventory just kind of keeps popping up through here as well as just kind of a minor theme. Any questions regarding the library question?
I had a comment. This is Jeremy again. Just for the council's sake, I asked Taylor to include these kind of last minute because I had just been invited to, they hired a new librarian over here recently, and I was part of the interview process. And as part of that, they just mentioned as an aside, oh, the last time you guys did a community survey, you included some questions about the library, and we really appreciated getting that data and information. And we hope if you ever do a survey again, you'll put in a couple of questions. I said, oh, well, matter of fact, we have that now. So we put in a few so that we could give that data to them.
Awesome. Any other questions? Okay. And then we asked just a preferred public information communication questions. Which of the following options do you use the most to stay informed about news and information from the town of Gypsum? 58% said the Vale Daily, followed by 49% saying Facebook or the word of mouth. 35% said the town website. 34% said town emails or e-news. 23% said the message board at the entrance of the town. 14% said utility bill notices. And then less than 10% for these following ones: Instagram, radio, the Gypsum Rec Center TV monitors, Twitter, Eagle Valley Enterprise, information posted at the town hall, or other. And then of those 9% that said radio, we did ask them the following question: which radio station do they get their information from? And as you can see, these were kind of all over, but 104.7 The Mile was the top, followed by 101.7 KSKE. Any questions regarding information services? Okay. So then we did ask a question, just a verbatim question. What comes to mind when you think about Gypsum? More specifically, when you think about the look and feel of the town of Gypsum, what images or words come to mind? And these are just some counts that came directly from the verbatims: small town, community, home, again, small, beautiful, nice, better, great, and then bedroom communities there at the bottom. And these numbers on the far right are how many times that they were mentioned within the verbatim response, and the percentages are what that percentage is out of all of the verbatims. Then there is also a word cloud here for you guys to look at. That kind of breaks it down by those verbatim responses. Small town was there at the top, that's why it's large and purple. Those that are darker, more of a darker pink, kind of were the next level, followed by those words that are orange. And then some themes that kind of came out of it. We did break this into two different things: positive and negative. So the positive kind of words or images that came to mind were friendly, quaint, peaceful, small town, rural. And some of the negative ones that came were dated, industrial, unappealing, stagnant, ugly. And again, I highly recommend you take the time to read through these verbatim responses to really have an understanding of where these residents' opinions are and what they feel, especially when it comes to these kind of questions. I know they can kind of get long and worded, especially for just kind of an opinion question. But these are really interesting to read through as you go through these. Then we went into some town events questions. Do you think the town of Gypsum has too many events, just the right amount, or too few events? 4% said that there's too many events. 57% said just the right amount, and 29% said too few events. And again, this really didn't have a difference between gender, but you do see a difference there between age and the tenure of how long they've lived in Gypsum. Those that are 18 to 34, roughly 38% say that there's too few events, compared to 17% of 55 and older respondents. And then kind of the same thing, those that have lived less than 10 years, 32% saying that there's too few events, and 26% of those that have lived more than 10 years saying that there's too few events. We then asked a question, do you have any comments or thoughts or suggestions regarding town events, what you would like to share with the town? Some suggestions that popped out were family-friendly events, more concerts that are not just country music, food or art movies, better information needed on the events that are there. And you can see as you read through these, a lot of this is talk of the Joy of Gypsum Days. But however, they look for a little bit more diversity in the acts that are brought in, and maybe just more concerts and more ticketed concerts and options. And then this was just kind of a follow-up question. Are there any comments, thoughts, or suggestions you would like to provide to the Gypsum town staff and council members? Excuse me. Some themes that came through on this question are there on the left. Really, it came down to grow responsibly, balancing out that residential versus commercial, and planning better for building around that community. There was quite a bit mentioning of comparing to other towns, what works good in the towns that are around you, compared to what does not work good. A look at kind of fixing some problems, whether that be water, speeding. And then there was just an overall theme of thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for trying to make the town better. Thank you for offering this survey to let people be heard. And just kind of that overall appreciativeness. But again, this is a good question if you have the time to read through these verbatim responses to really understand how people's opinions are. Then these following slides are just some of the demographics of the community survey. I mentioned some of these already, 51% female, 47% male. Those that were less than 10 years was roughly 45%. Those that were more than 10 years was roughly 55%. And then age range, we have it broke out by more age groups. But again, that 18 to 34, 35 to 54, and 55 and older is what we really dove into within these questions. And then we also have it broken out by income. So that's kind of a quick, brief overview of the results. Is there any questions for me?
I did want to mention, although the slides have a few examples of the verbatim answers, I have a comprehensive multi-page document full of verbatim responses that I can certainly share with you. I think it's a PDF, right, Courtney? Isn't that what you sent? So yeah, I can pretty easily email that as well as the slides tonight.
Yeah, and those verbatim responses, we do have some of the demographics tied to that, whether it be gender, age, the tenure that they've been living in Gypsum. So we can rank those differently if you'd like to look at those by any different demographic.
Okay, thank you. Courtney, I had one quick question. I'm not sure you can answer it this evening, but how many of the respondents chose to take the survey in Spanish?
I actually looked at that before I hopped on here tonight. Only six people took it in Spanish.
Wow, okay.
But
Thank
we
you.
had more than that were obviously selected Hispanic, but only 6 took it in Spanish.
In Spanish, yeah, okay. Any other questions from council, staff? No? Quick through. Okay, well, thank you, Courtney. If anything else comes up, I'll certainly be in touch, and otherwise I'll send out some of those verbatim responses. Should I just send that out to everybody? Okay.
I just would say that, I seem to have an echo here. I just say that a lot of the things, I think maybe the reason we don't have a response is for me at any rate, is exactly what I would have expected. So I think, you know, the lack of a downtown, you know, we hear about speeding. I'm not surprised really by anything in the survey, I don't think. So it's, to me, it's more than more of an affirmation than a discovery, I guess.
Yeah, that was my observation when David presented that to us. He presented us to us on the staff level, kind of in a tepid way, worrying that he might offend some department directors about some of these results. And honestly, I looked at these results and said, oh, I think this is really valuable because it reaffirms that we are in tune with our community and do understand the issues and pressures that are at play, because I didn't find anything very shocking either. So I thought that was good, because if we had had a survey came back that was totally out of alignment with our priorities and where we think we needed to spend our resources and time, that would have been a time for self-reflection of, wow, we're not listening very well.
I agree that the results weren't surprising, but I think it's really important to do. I think surveys are important to keep a pulse on what's happening. So I wasn't surprised by anything except for the mosquito thing, but we already talked about that.
Yeah, I think it's also great that some of what we would be trying to do, like, I think at least my goals, and I think most of the council's goals are some economic development. And people seem to want that sort of economic development when you look at what they're looking for is a downtown and some restaurants and places to go. And gosh, I mean, I guess we're looking at putting somebody on next year to cover this a little bit more, but it really is something I think we need to put our efforts into, but we sort of knew that anyhow.
Yeah, I think the biggest policy challenge for the next several years is figuring out how to balance this growth with the desire question of, well, people want commercial activity. They don't necessarily want to see the growth, but you get commercial activity because of growth. And then at the same time, they want affordable housing, rightly so, but that entails you need supply. So there's some laws of economics at work here that will have to be managed pretty prudently, thoughtfully.
Okay, thanks, Courtney.
Yeah, well, let me know if you guys have any questions or if you need anything further. We're happy to help. So we'll talk to you all soon.
All right.
Thank you very much, Courtney. We appreciate your guys' help. And also Taylor, thanks for getting this kicked off and completed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no problem. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.